Here we are. Hello. Let me see. Do we have internet here? Yes, this is working. Yeah, okay. This is finally existing. Um, let me see. I I need to set up everything. So, wait. I didn't change this. There it is. I need to set up the YouTube capturing because I started streaming before I went to sleep. So yeah, give me a second. Um, I have it over here. There it is. What the fuck is this? Okay. Yeah, this is fine. I didn't even change the date. Today is 165 day. Amazing. So, anyways, we are over here. This is the window that I have to capture. Let me YouTube properties, videos, yeah, properties, browser, new browser, source capture, yes. Here it is. Yeah, amazing. So, fuck. Wait, shut up. There it is. There we have it. I am forgetting out something else. No, right? Yeah, I should be because I literally just went live without really, without really preparing anything. So yeah, I think we don't have a vote, right? Let's go because I want to check that. Let me see. We don't even have the vote working properly, right? Um, X. Yeah, no, what? It is working. What? What? It is what? What? What the fuck? I uh, okay. I will give it some time, and if it doesn't work, we're what? I don't know. I guess let's do it like this then. Twitch, yeah. Let me. No, what? I didn't have the Twitch. Do I have? And wait, I was worrying over anything non-important. I guess I already have it over here. So, anyways, let me move over here. No, wait. Fuck. Yeah, I knew that I was writing out something. I knew it. I was right all along. Let me. This is amazing. This is quality streaming. This is what happens when you are sleepy, sleepless. I say. So yeah, there it is. Transition, and now for real, we can properly start watching this. I guess we're going to go a little bit back because it was explained more. Basically, we're going to get in the middle of something if we skip this particular part where it jumps into the topic of faces and all of that. Hello? Does it not want to change?
Do is to show a face and pretend they show this face all by itself.
Okay,
Wait. Face disappears, and then they see the face they just saw and a new face.
There it
And
is.
infants who saw this face a few moments ago
At
will spend more
normal
time
speed.
looking at the new face than the old face. You can track where their eyes are. And that's the evidence they remember the face they saw before because they selectively spend more time on the new face. And also they're hungry to look at the new face. It's like, I've seen this face, been there, done that. Okay, new face, check out this person, right? If you test them at 6 months, they'll have a preference, for the face, the new face. But if you show them two different monkeys, and this might feel hard for you to tell these apart. If you show them two different monkeys, they'll behave the same with monkey faces as they do with human faces. They'll prefer the novel face, which shows you they remember.
Wait, anyways, wait. I think I get the concept, if I'm not so wrong. Because I already watched this and because I already kind of know what it is about. So yeah, the concept itself is basically you have not people, what? You have kids and you have also monkeys that can or cannot recognize different faces. The only thing that changes in this particular case is the way in which this monkey, let's say, no, I think it was done with babies in this case, yeah. The way in which these babies recognize or not different faces is based on the fact that they can, when they are 6 months, they can taste a skin. If they have seen this face, they pass to the next one, and if they are presented with a human and a monkey face, they will pass to the next one, no matter which one it is. When they get to 9 months, they will also do the same, but in this particular case, they will try to recognize first the human faces, and that was explained. Well, no, it wasn't properly explained here. The explanation was given by not by me. I am not the creator of that theory, but basically based on the supposedly, I think it was uh, this is I don't remember the biology of the brain that makes things be remembered through time. Basically, that it is important for humans in this particular case to remember the fact, yeah, the different things that compose a face, not only because the face itself is important, but also because the message that the face might carry will show you also how much of a threat or of a good thing it is to approach somebody.
What face
So
they
yeah.
saw before, most, they start to get much
Yeah, yeah.
more accurate for human faces. The experience they have
Yeah,
with
yeah,
human faces starts to make them much better at that. At birth, faces from one species are as good as another, but with practice and experience, they
yeah.
become human face specialists, and they become much better at that. So it's not in our genes to be awesome at human faces, but something about faces, and then a lot depends on what we see, and we grow that part of our mind and brain. So here's a remarkable experiment that you couldn't do with people that was done with infant monkeys. These monkeys, after they were born, were given no exposure to faces, depending on the monkey, for 6 to 24 months. That's not quite completely true, because at their birth they saw some faces that you couldn't start this experiment at the first moment of birth. But as soon as they could from birth, for 6 to 24 months, so when they were being fed, this is what they saw. They were given an interesting environment to see lots of stuff, and they would live in something like this. So they could not see another monkey. They could not see a human. They never saw a face except for the first moments of birth. Then they allowed them, before they saw any living face on a monkey or a human, they would do these kinds of experiments that you just heard with infants. And they would show that these monkeys would preferentially look at faces, both human faces and monkeys, and they had no preference between them. They would always go for a face compared to an object, monkey face or a human face. And they could do this kind of discrimination the first moment before they had ever, except for whatever happens right at birth, seen one. So they never practiced on anything because they had not.
Well, I mean, in a more particular sense, I would try to explain it as because even if you do not completely have seen by yourself humans, let's say, or any particular face, the fact that you in your genes carry the knowledge of faces existing out there, let's say, and even more being aware of the fact that these different faces are out there, not as simple things, but taking into account the past explanation that maybe these are pertaining to people and or well, are pertaining to animal beings, and these animal beings might have an interest on harming or helping you. It is important for these type of animals to be able to recognize, obviously, which kind of intentions are behind the different faces that are surrounding them. Let's say so. It shouldn't be needed for you to be explained that concept. I think at that point it becomes so biologically integrated with you that it is as easy as to learn how to breathe, let's say. Maybe it will be required for some animals, some monkeys, or whatever, that they might require an explanation when you haven't in your whole life understood properly what it means. But at the same time, it is on the same realm of, for example, somebody who has never learned how to properly walk. They might also need an explanation. Because if you do not know what important is about having a certain skill, you usually need not only to develop that skill, but also to have a reason enough so that you can properly do it. You wouldn't expect that out of nowhere somebody who has never observed faces will grow an interest completely from zero on them. So yeah, that is also another reason as to why, at least to me, it seems kind of logical that um, no matter what it is, a monkey, a baby, uh, will search for faces, even if they themselves have never even understood the concept of faces. So yeah, continue.
been allowed to see a face. But the first moment before they saw any living face, they already had this preference for faces, for both humans and monkeys, all right? As if it's in our genes to be drawn to faces. And what the mechanism is, a top heavy, something else, we don't quite know. But it's in our brain to go for faces. They're so important for us. Then some monkeys hung around people, and some monkeys were hung around monkeys, okay? And what happened is really quite striking. They got better at the species they hung around. So if you did these kinds of tests, the monkeys who hung around monkeys got better and better at monkeys, and the monkeys that hung around people got better and better at people. All right? So what does that mean? That means it looks like there's a genetic preparation. The first face that they see with the slight asterisk of the moment of birth, they're already preferring faces. The very first one they see, even though they've gone 6 months to 2 years without seeing any face at all. And then they get better selectively on the species they're exposed to. So there's a genetic preparation and then kind of a sensitive period where you build up a representation
I would
of the
say,
species that you're living with.
yeah, basically that it is kind of logical that no matter where it is that you're living, you will not yourself, your unconscious mind will understand that it is important for you to develop an understanding regarding the different phases that are surrounding you. Be it, for example, if you're living with wolves, it will be important for you to understand the different gestures that they have, because a lot of times, even in animals that do not utilize completely, let's say, language, even in those cases, um, non-verbal things exist, and non-verbal gestures also indicates some things. Because, for example, even more in more primal animals, you can see it happening constantly. Let's say you can observe that these particular animals, and even more in general, these particular kind of beings tend to not only explain themselves and not only also, let's say, have the possibility of communicating through those primal noises, but also the different gestures that they utilize carry more meaning sometimes than what we ourselves as humans utilize. Because we can know sometimes that as humans, somebody might be faking their emotions, but in the animal realm, it is a harder thing. Therefore, it becomes more important to find those who are having any kind of gesture to understand the real intentions. So yeah, it would be kind of expected that as animals who live with other animals, we will be predisposed to adapt to whatever situation we are thrown in. At the end of the day, I would even say, yeah, it is not probably something that we can completely understand as to why it happens, but the desire for survival and even more the desire for adapting to the surrounding environments is there. We might not know the real, complete, profound reason, because even if we say, yeah, because the individual might want to prolong their existence, we do not know if that is true or not. So, yeah, we only know that it happens, not a real reason, I think, but well, let's see. Let's see what else is there.
So let me slide there for a moment to now writing. So, as long as there's been mammals, as long as there's been people, we've been born to things around us with faces and interacted with people with faces, right? Okay, so that's deep in our evolutionary history. Not deep in our evolutionary history is writing. The first visual language of any kind is about 4,000 years ago. Not until the Gutenberg Bible and that's about 600 years ago, was there, did large numbers of people read. So unlike faces and objects, which have been around forever, not only for us, but for other species, writing and reading have been around only for a few hundred years. Our brains are not evolved to be reading brains. It's just an unbelievably powerful cultural invention. And people can read fast. A typical reader can do this. This is kind of amazing. I mean, if you didn't know anything, most of us know somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 words, okay? We don't know all of them well. We can't spell all of them correctly, but we kind of can get them if we see them. And if we show you one word, in 50 thousandths of a second, you can recognize which word you saw. It's kind of amazing. People read about 200 to 250 words per minute. A typical reader cruising along when they're focused. These things can be measured relatively simply. Here's one that's a little trickier, but let me tell you again, it shows you how experiments, I think, can tell us something we could not have guessed without the experiment about how you read every moment you've read throughout your life, okay? So I'm going to tell you now that you read about 12 letters at a time, and then you move your eyes. Wherever you're reading, a book, a computer, you'll read about 12 letters. That's where you're fixated. Those will only be visible to you, and then you'll move your eyes to get the next set of letters you need to read. Okay? Now, you go, no, there's text there, and I'm looking, I'll give you, I move my eyes, but what's really happening? Let me show you how blind you are to everything but 12 letters at a time. So here's the experiment from McConkie and Rayner, and many people have found this since. They tracked people's eye movements. You get a machine that tracks where your eyes are fixated, where you're looking. Every time you moved, what they did is they took the text that was written across the monitor, they kept about 12 letters where you're looking, and they made everything else on the monitor X's. Okay? You don't know this, you're just reading, okay? So you're reading people of, this is where your eyes are, the computer makes everything else an X. You move your eyes, now this becomes X's and these are X's. You move your eyes, these become X's. You move your eyes, these become X's. Does that make sense? Every time you move, where you land, they give you the words and letters, but everything to...
I mean, the the purpose of this experiment was to test if people was really not paying attention to what they were reading, or was something else to try and test the algorithm. I mean, in a sense, how can you really say, and even more, if you're noticing that something is kind of off in the environment in which you are, let's say, existing, how will you really have the possibility of saying, what the fuck is this? Why are there, at least to me it seems, why are there things happening on my peripheral vision, and why it is that they are happening? I don't know, but it seems very interesting at least to notice that we are constrained by the capacity of only reading 12 letters and no more. I don't know. It seems interesting at least, but
to the left and right are all X's. And the astounding thing is, nobody ever says, hey, why are there all the X's? Right? Because when you're reading, unbeknownst to you, you only see it with good acuity 12 letters at a time. And everything else, you barely notice is there. You notice something is there. If there's nothing there, you would notice it. But your mind is not really seeing it at all. Okay? And so people have tried to represent this. When you read, it's something like this. Okay? Where you look in your fovea or your high acuity, you see about 12 letters. Everything else is like this. And that's why if I flip it to X's, you don't even notice, because it's all pretty crummy how you see it. You notice something is there, but it's pretty crummy.
Fucking God. Yes.
Okay? Now, you could say, I don't believe it. But people have done this experiment over and over again. And when they flip everything to X's to the left and right of about 12 letters that you're looking at, people just don't know, because they don't really see it as they read anyway. Does that make sense? 12 letters at a time. So again, we're trying to understand some of these things in regards to difficulties people have. So it turns out there's a part of the brain that's also involved in reading called, where if you have damage, you get what's called word blindness. So these are adults who are good readers, no problem in reading. They get a stroke in the left visual cortex around here. The most famous original case, in 1887, all of a sudden one day after a headache, this man was unable to read. His vision was otherwise perfectly good. He could hear words and speak words. He could see numbers. He could write down words. His writing was kind of slow and laborious, okay, and it wasn't typical writing. But then you could show him a few moments later what he had written, and he would not be able to read it aloud. Okay, so here's a pathway that's where stuff out there in the world in vision meets how we read.
No, more copyright. I love it. And I will guess in a fucking stupid. Oh, what the fuck? Made me more angry than what I expected. Sorry. Oh my god. Sorry. No, what I was trying to say was, I think it probably happens, as it was kind of explained before, the different ways in which the brain pathways all of these functions is properly, not probably, sorry, not properly, probably pathway in ways in which it represents a not so direct necessity of being correlated one thing with the other. And I will guess, if I were to give a proper reason, or if I were to guess a reason more than to give, if I were to make up a reason, at least to me it seems kind of logical to expect that what you are trying to have, let's say, and what you're trying to make, in the sense of even more, in the sense of not only analyzing, but also finding properly the different information that exists inside of your brain, you shouldn't, it isn't that you shouldn't, it is more useful for the brain to not storage so much thing so close one to the other, because it will represent the capacity, or even less in the same spaces, it will represent the capacity of alternating and also finding, let's say, yeah, not only finding but moving inside of the brain with a faster pace things. Why? Because I think if it were to be true, theory, it is something like, because you have to go from one end of the brain to the other, let's say front back, all of that stimulates the brain more than to simply do it back left, back right, and back and forth like that. So yeah, I don't guess it is true, but probably that is my reason as to why it happens.
Amazing. Now, it turns out, just like there's a spot in your brain, that's the first moment where something you see is a face, there's a part that's shown here in red that's near that. It's bigger in the left hemisphere, the language hemisphere. That's pretty relatively specific for words compared to other things. And so we end up with a picture like this of relatively specific areas in the back of our brain that are highly specialized for recognizing where things are. I didn't talk too much about that, but there's that area. Faces, words, and objects. And if you have damage to any of these pathways, for whatever reason, the rest of our brain can't compensate. It's all a big mystery. Who am I looking at? What word am I looking at? What object do I see? Now, you might imagine that for things like faces or locations, we've had evolutionary pressure forever to be good at that. Where are we? Who are we with? Whereas things like words or nonsense words and letters or chairs, which are a recent cultural invention, our brains are not genetically predisposed to those specific categories. So here's a very clever study from Ted Polk at Michigan. So he took twins, and we'll talk more about this, but the way people try to get at, until we know the real genes involved in things, they'll compare twins who are identical twins with the identical genes and twins who are so-called fraternal twins, right, who are born to the same family but don't have the identical genes. And to the extent the identical twins are more similar to each other than the fraternal twins, that's a suggestion there's genetic influences on whatever you're looking at. So what they did is they had these people look at faces, places, letter strings, and chairs, and they calculated how similar was one twin to another, okay? Either identically genetic or not. And what they found was that for the faces and the house and the places, there was much more similarity, significantly more similarity between identical twins than fraternal twins. That's the genetic predisposition in some way of how you will see a face or know where you are. If they compared reading nonsense words, letter strings, or chairs, the two kinds of twins were just the same. It's as if there's no genetic predisposition in you to know where in your brain you're going to process words or chairs. But that makes sense because, a couple thousand years ago, there were no words, okay? And a few more thousand years than that, there were no chairs, right? So that's not, we don't have the genes for recent inventions in the world, but our brain is brilliant at becoming good at things like reading as we invent them.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it probably does not correlate the way in which you can interact with the surroundings that are created, that are man-made, let's say, because the difference would only be your capacity, and the capacity itself lies in the also other capacity of understanding the thing with which you interact. It will be kind of hard for anybody to properly interact with anything if they did not understand it. But no matter who you are, as long as you are capable of grasping every concept that makes a thing what it is, you can have it existing, let's say. But thank you.
It's 305, darling. Today I just want to tell you, que a mí me gusta la Pepsi.
Thank you. Wait, what? Marley, hello, Marley, and also, I wanted to ask who, wait, take me here, there it is, welcome. Now more properly, welcome. I hope you have a great stream. As always, if you need to rest, if you need to do something, no real problem. We are doing a little bit of study, so no real worries as always. I hope also, just in case if you are still there, Marley, please take care of your throat. I think you did like 2 hours of singing or something like that. You had like 17 songs, so yeah. But because of that, take care of your throat, my brother. It is tiring, so yeah, please properly take care. And well, I hope you enjoyed whatever it was that you sang at the end. I was, but not at the proper end because I thought this is so sad. But well, thank you. Now, context. What we're doing? Yeah. This is el Vtuber. Yes, and also hello everybody. Hello. What? Regulus Oval and Copa. Welcome. Now, what we're doing? It was we are studying. That's basically it. we are we are not doing so much stuff. We are simply staying a video about what about the. I think this is more neurology than really anything else. So yeah, we are analyzing content, basically reacting. This is amazing. This is reacting content, basically. So well, um, let me let me let me proceed with what I was doing. Why? Because I I don't have anything else to really say. So well, please enjoy your stay and now.
Okay. For the last part of the talk, I want to talk about face recognition. So all of us know that when we learned to read, it was a pretty big deal. It's a while ago. If you're a typical reader, you're past it. If you're a struggling reader, that can be a persistent problem, but you got through it and you're a reader. None of us went to third grade and said, today is the day that we study faces, right? Okay. All right. And your parents are going, I hope you're good at faces because we really want you to go to MIT someday. This is the moment to get ready for the face SAT. But what I'm going to show you is that, in fact, through experience, you're educated for faces, and there's some social consequences for the faces you're not educated on average. So let's talk about that. The one way we see faces is we see faces that are right side up, right? Okay, overwhelmingly. So
What?
I'm going to show you this upside down face. I'm going to reverse it.
Yes.
Okay, that's gruesome, right? But can you tell that it's going to, when that turns, it's going to be this? So the way that we interpret the weirdness of face inversion, the fact that we process upside down faces so badly, okay, we don't have a hint of what's really there, it's because we didn't practice on them. It's as if I gave you a test in a language that you never spoke or read. Well, you're going to do badly, right? So that shows you the face thing is not, it's so experience dependent. It's because you see upright faces, you get good at upright faces. All we have to do is turn it upside down, and all the knowledge and skill you have, it's as if I tested you in a different language. It's that specific. Here's another example. Side by side, looks pretty similar, but that's what you're really seeing, right? I mean, it's unbelievable, right? Okay, you turn your head to believe me in case you're suspicious, or yeah? Okay, no, this is legit. So, we're so bad at upside down faces because we don't practice on them, okay? So what we are good at in faces is so much dependent on what we practice. Now, you may recognize this person or not. Okay, these are less dramatic, but okay. Now, people don't become as good as they get at faces until about age 16. We don't consciously practice it, but the social experience we have is practicing how you perceive a face. One fun study from Susan Carey now at Harvard is she took dog show judges. Now, I don't know too much about dog shows. Some of you might know something, but a little bit what I know is this. Sort of like in sports, you have judges who work their way up a ladder of experience and reputation, okay? So in sports things, you have the local judges, and the really good ones become the ones for the bigger leagues, and the big ones get to go to the Super Bowl, the World Series, who are really skilled and thought to be excellent, right? Dog show judges similarly start locally. The ones who seem pretty good and persistent at it, then become the state judge show, and then they go to the big one in New York. So they did this face inversion experiments on dog show judges, people who are just beginning to be a dog show judge, people who've done it for a while, people who've done it for a lot of years. And they asked, when do you get so much better at a right side up dog face than an upside down dog face? Now, most people are about the same to start with, right? Because we're not that good at dog faces. We'll know you might know a dog or two, but you don't know hundreds of dogs. It took 8 years for dog show judges, and they were dog enthusiasts, for many years before they became a dog show judge. 8 years of seeing many, many dogs at dog show competitions to develop the upright face expertise that we all have for faces as adults. So for an adult, you have to practice 8 years to get this kind of expertise, right? So you can't just do it by cramming. It's practice, practice, practice in the most brutal fundamental sense.
Okay, wait, pause. I wanted to pass you from the point is kind of stretched a little bit. And also, welcome, Frank, and thank you for your contribution. I think the idea itself might be related to the fact that when you're trying to understand faces, you need to see them as something that has an inherent value. If you cannot find a correlation as to why you might need to see them, for example, even in the case of somebody who here was a dog judge, you wouldn't really have a necessity for understanding even less outside of the realm of an experiment why an up down or what was it, right down or left down face was looking correct or not. You wouldn't have a necessity for developing something like that if it wasn't suggested to you that it might as well be needed. I mean, almost logically, you wouldn't practice for something that will never appear in your life. In that same sense, you cannot expect to develop a keen sense for if a face is correctly be portrayed when it is up down or not. If you have never encountered a situation in which you need to have that capacity of searching, let's say, but aside from that, I don't really see what is the point. I mean, yeah, we lack the knowledge about things that we do not realize daily. Obviously, what? Yeah, thank you for the idea. Yes, continue.
Now, I'll say one last thing about this and go to the last topic. The other thing is that we understand also, and we've mentioned this before, but I'll say one more time, that, that imagination and perception use the same neural territory in your mind. So here's a study from Nancy Canwisher again. Here's a part of the brain that responds to faces. Seeing a face, seeing a house, seeing a face, seeing a house. Now, imagining a face, imagining a house, imagining a face, imagining a house. So the seeing one drives the brain more strongly than imagining it. But when you imagine a face, you seem to use the same brain network as when you see it. It's just not as vivid and powerful, right? So perception is the stuff literally in your mind of imagination. You can imagine things because you've seen them before. Literally in your brain is the same part of the brain. So the last topic I want to talk about.
Okay, wait here, back. I mean, it will make sense for things to be in that realm when you notice that, or when you try to make the connection that you cannot react to things if you haven't ever, let's say, seen them before. You cannot, if I were to ask you, yeah, for example, one of the easiest things to always bring in this kind of example is we cannot imagine a fourth or fifth dimension, yeah, fourth or fifth dimension object because we have never seen one of those. But it is easier if somebody were to say, imagine a ball. You have before seen a ball, therefore you understand how a ball exists and all of that. You can properly judge a ball and say, yeah, I am imagining a ball because you have seen it and you can properly bring that image and alter what you have already seen before to fit whatever kind of description they are giving to you to imagine. But it is kind of obvious even more that reality will be stronger in that sense because it becomes less of an act of having to create something and simply an act of interpreting what it is that you are observing. I mean, in that sense, if I am not wrong, it happened, for example, that when we were sleeping, the same parts that also had to deal with seeing things were activating, even if you were sleeping. I think that makes no sense because literally when you're asleep, you have your eyes closed. Therefore, the only thing you should supposedly be seeing is relaxed. So, yeah, I don't know. Continue.
Or literally in your brain is the same part of the brain. The last topic I want to talk about is a sensitive and difficult one. So I want to do it right, I hope. But one that's a practical one and a consequence, we believe, of the fact that you're good at faces that you practice. So we're going to talk about in these studies people perceiving faces of European Americans or white Americans or African Americans. And there's a huge amount of research that shows the following, that whatever racial group you see a lot of, you're pretty good at remembering those faces. In whatever group you see less, you're far worse. We interpret this as a consequence of the practice that you have. But social psychologists worry it has a second consequence. So let me tell you the practice story. So we did a study, this is from us, but it's very similar to other people in terms of the conclusion. There's literally like 1,000 of these studies that show that people are superior at recognizing in an experiment faces from their own group and from other groups. And here are an experiment that was done with Stanford students. I'll look in their mind and then in their brain. These are Stanford students some years ago, maybe a lot like you in many ways. And they saw some faces, and then they got a memory test. This is their performance on the memory test. So we had both European American and African American faces that they viewed. And the participants in the research were both African American and European American. Okay, so there were white faces, white subjects, black faces, black subjects. And what you can see is this: the higher the bar, the better the memory. In both groups, they're better in performance at remembering faces from their own group, right? But there's more to it than that. If you look at these bars, these are the memory for the white faces, and it's about the same in the two groups. And look at the big difference for the African American face. So two things are happening here. One of them is there's superior memory from faces from your own group. And the second story is that, for what we believe from other research as well as this, that if you're in a minority group, you're still pretty good at the majority faces. If you're a majority group, you're not so good at the minority faces. So these are European American Stanford students, and look how miserable their memory is for this African American faces. This is a difficult topic for us, because, in part because race is a different topic.
I mean, the problem is, okay, before really trying to get an answer here, the problem is you're giving more importance than what it has, my brother. What I see is, okay, yes, there is a different capacity of observing faces, no matter which kind of race they are from, let's say. But the best example is if you are from this side of the world, we are west of it. If you are from the west, you cannot recognize so easily faces that are from the east, more specifically people who is let's say out of those Chinese, Vietnamese, and Japanese and Korean, all of those places are almost impossible to recognize to you because you lack the capacity of observing things which you haven't really analyzed before. You form a judgment and you even more develop in yourself the capacity of observing and properly discerning which factors differentiate one from the other when you are trying to have it. You cannot say, yeah, I am I will be out of nowhere capable of seeing it and even more capable of properly yeah differentiating and let's say in the sense of choices, not in the sense of anything racially just discriminate between one face and the other because you have the capacity when you create it. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. The same case applies here. How would you, living in a society in which minorities are not so consistent to observe, have the capacity of differentiating between one another of those different minorities instead of if you were surrounded by people like that, properly seeing the differences that make one face different to the other. I understand that it might be racially just. It doesn't need to be. But well, I don't know. What are we learning? We're continuing with we are continuing with the lecture number 6. We left a little bit the other day because I have to leave. So we are continuing with right now the I think the best way to put it is face recognition and all of that. Right now, the video finally talk about the concept of the incapacity that we have of differentiating between faces that are from people that we see more and their ethnicities and faces that are less seen and there are also other ethnicities. And it was kind of uncomfortable because it made it, oh no, this is so racially judged. No, it isn't. So yeah, spent some minor amount of time responding to the question as to why it is can be obviously hard to differentiate between the people that you see and the people that you never see, and the different ethnicities that you interact with and those who you might as well have never interacted with. So, with that said, yeah, I think continue.
For good reasons, but it's social psychologists worry that the lack of practice that many of us have on other groups growing up at home, in our community and schools, and it varies for people, but on average, makes us less able to individuate in our memory one person from another in other groups. And that's and now this is not about racial attitudes, right? This is simple objective recognition of faces, but it could certainly support consideration of other groups as if they were all the same because they look all the same. So I remember I had an African-American colleague at Stanford, and he was a dean, and he went to China with a Nobel laureate who's now the Secretary of Energy in the Obama administration, Steve Chewy. And of course, Nobel laureates are pretty big deals, right? So this dean was, went to this Nobel laureate all the time as they were meeting Stanford donors and other things, right? He said that they got on the plane, they went to China, the two of them, and he went into a reception, and he knew Steve Chewy was in there. The African-American dean said, I could not pick him out for my life. When I saw him now, not with other people I know, but with 500 other Chinese people in a large reception, all right? So it's not about bad attitudes in this case. It's just literally the experience you have. And in the brain, this part of this FFA.
Wait, long response. Wait, I think this is kind of obvious. It extends to everything. You will have, you will be hard pressed to have one who is unfamiliar with cars, tell the difference between them without purposely looking very closely. Yeah, I mean, it is like that, obviously. If you think that somehow you should have the capacity of perfectly discerning between, mm, as it said here, somebody who is, I think, Chinese, for example, and I think already there is a big difference, if I'm not wrong, between somebody who is Chinese and somebody who is Vietnamese. So if you have never observed people like that, you will obviously have a hard time. But as long as you practice and also as long as you start developing inside of you the capacity of discerning, it will be born. The, I think the problem is it kind of, yeah, it kind of started to deviate a little bit because it also added the idea of, is this racial church and is this deeper like the professor said here? This ends up creating hatred for groups when it is literally unrelated, completely unrelated. It is like if somehow, because you as a kid do not even understand the differences between types of car and you get run over by a red car, the next time you see any type of red car, you will be scared to death of a red car. It it is not something that has to deal with the red car itself. It is the problem of the individual that hasn't solved their issues with the concept of a red car. I understand it, but yeah, it got kind of funky in the middle of it. I don't know. I
responds
don't know.
more to groups from your own, on average, from your own racial group than the other racial group. And we think that's promoting
Yes,
the ease with which you identify individuals in your group and the difficulty with which you can identify individuals in another group. And so we have strong reason to think that this is all
yes,
about
basically.
this particular phenomenon, about your experience. So let me tell you why. One thing is we know that this is not present at birth. People have done these kinds of experiments with infants. These racial biases in what kinds of faces we can remember are not present at birth. So they're not in our genes, they're from our experience. But they are present by 3 months. But by then you've seen a lot of people in your family. And the kind of experiment that's very telling for this is a study where they were Korean children. They were 3 to 9 years old. They were adopted by European Caucasian families. Okay, so in this sense, a cross-racial adoption. And then they tested their memory for faces. And for these Korean children adopted by European Caucasian families, they had better memory for the Caucasian faces because that's who they saw around them all the time. And they were just like their French peers who also saw Caucasian faces all the time. And the opposite of the findings that you got with Korean children in South Korea. So it's, the inversion one is kind of funny, amazing, right? The fact that we can struggle to individuate in memory one African American from another, or one Asian American from another, or one Caucasian American from another, depending on the environment that we grew up in and were exposed to, that could be facilitating stereotyping and lack of individuation of people in other groups. So the very last thing I want to do.
Okay, wait here. I think, in a sense, trying to tie all of this with any kind of logic, and also, yeah, as Vita said, you're basically right, Kemal. Yes. I, I don't know why they made it so uncomfortable to discuss, but I think the response as to why, as it says here, when you have, when you are 3 months old or less, you are predisposed to intake any face at all, no matter what race, quote unquote, they are. It is because as a kid you need to know your surroundings. And when you start to adapt there, you lose the interest because you already know what it is that is going to exist. But I would guess if you were to change locations, and in the most extreme case, if you were to change countries directly to live in a place in where the whole structure of a face or average structure of a face is completely swapped, you will also struggle, but you will develop with time the capacity of also differentiating those. It isn't that you cannot solve it. It is only a minor inconvenience, let's say. It is not a real problem. It is only a minor inconvenience that can be easily solved as long as the individual itself takes the responsibility of solving it, let's say. But yeah, I don't know.
This is just a couple of minutes. Is talk about expression of faces, and I'll come back to this in detail before. I just want to give you one last example of recognition of in the amygdala and fear. So we'll come back to this in some detail later on, but emotion researchers have argued that there's about 6 basic emotions that people around the world transmit with their facial expressions: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. You can show these pictures to people around the world, and there'll be to some degree a consensus about what they are. Universal expressions of feelings transmitted by facial expressions. Now, let's talk about fear faces. I'll just talk about fear today. And we'll talk about the amygdala. So we have one on the left and one on the right, a very small structure, almond-shaped, one inside each of your temporal lobes, right next to the hippocampus. So that's a view from the side of where that's located, one on the left and one on the right. And we know from a lot of animal research, and I'll come back to this again, that the amygdala is essential for learned fear. So here's an experiment that shows you that, okay? One thing that mice know is cats are bad news, okay? It's survival. What they did in this experiment is they anesthetized the cat. That's why the cat looks glassy-eyed. And obviously, the experiment would end too quickly for the mouse. If the mouse had to, come out and play with the cat, the experiment would be brutal and ugly and over too quickly, right? But if the cat is breathing, the cat's eyes are open, it's anesthetized, so it can't move. Now, a typical rat will still, or mouse, will typically still avoid the cat. It's not worth figuring out exactly what's going on with that cat. Like, are they faking me out, right? I'll just go that way, right? But not the mouse who has the amygdala removed. It's not fearful of what it ought to be fearful of anymore. Okay, even survival. I mean, what we believe the most important role of fear is not fear of SATs or midterms, although we live in that world. Okay, it's fear of what can injure you and kill you. Those are the things to learn. Be fearful of what can kill you. Fearful of what can injure you. Without the amygdala, you lose that fear. But here's the other this is my last slide, amazing thing. There are humans who have injuries selectively to the amygdala. Very few, but there's a few.
Okay, wait, before I continue, because there is also another study that was done related to this, in which it shows that when you lack such an important part of your brain as the amygdala, you become more of a wandering animal, one which engages in the act of exploring everything. Because even more, when you do not have emotions that kind of guide you and give you also an understanding or a probability of analyzing your surroundings with a better judgment, you need to create those judgments by basing yourself on the past experiences that you have. And one of the few things that even when the amygdala itself is removed, if something is hurtful, you will know that it is bad. And if something isn't hurtful, you will at the very least not regard it as bad. So it is also for that same reason that a mouse with its amygdala removed will try to interact with a cat. It isn't that, wow, this particular cat, I want to be friends with the cat. No. What? They only want to know if the cat is going to kill them or not. I don't know. I may be not to be really comprehending that.
And not only do they have some problems with fear learning, but they can't recognize fearful facial expressions anymore. So here's if they ask them to say, what is this, without the word present, they're very bad at telling you that's a fearful face. They can recognize all the other expressions pretty well, but not the fearful ones. And this patient also has, they're good at faces. They're not prosopagnosis, they're fine at faces, they recognize their family, but they can't recognize fearful expressions selectively. And when they draw it, this is actually very good drawing. Happy, sad, surprised, disgusted, angry. When she's asked to draw a fearful facial expression, this patient draws this, a baby being afraid. She understands the concept. It's not only that she can't recognize it, she can't imagine what a fearful face looks like. And we saw this over and over again. And now it's specifically that. And there's one last message in this. Somehow our knowledge about what a fearful face looks like, we're not scared of this. You don't look at this and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe he showed that in class. I'll never sleep for 48 hours. Right? That's not that's a social signal for somebody telling you, whoa, there's something terrible happening here. Look around you. We better run, right? It's a social signal. And the part of your brain that learns what can kill you also is where the knowledge is stored to recognize a social signal about something that could be very dangerous. The same idea that we put our knowledge in the parts of the brain that act upon the world.
Yeah, basically. That is beautiful. And yeah, I mean, in that same sense, even stuff as simple what? It is not even close to being simple. When you are, for example, a sociopath, you can also understand what so facial cues might mean, and you might be able to apply those particular contexts in the reality that you are living. Yet you can still not properly assess them or say, yeah, this particular feeling feels like this, and things like that. If the fact that you can see it, as in this case, you cannot portray a face in terror, doesn't mean that you cannot understand what it means to see somebody in terror. So yeah, I think it is interesting. It was interesting at least. And well, also I don't know how did I stretch. How much? I think it was 20 minutes or so. 25 minutes into a 1 hour time. I am amazing. Sorry. So yeah, I think because of that, fuck, I wanted to watch a review. This is so bad. Well, we tried our best, but I kind of failed on that, you know. Yeah. For the next time, we were going to react at something new, but this is it today. I might as well have have our done. No, this is so bad. Well, anyways, I wanted to leave because I also need to go and take some supper with my family. So yeah, let me once again, as always, say thanks for everything. Thanks for the opportunity, in particular today. Also thanks to Merle. I think, or I don't know if he's here or not. But yes, thanks for playing. Thanks everyone for staying. Thanks also as always, Lucas and beautiful watchers. Thanks for everything. And well, now let me show you. I will try to concentrate because it's training is important. So let me see. Why is it so many people? This is incredible. Okay, there it is. I have one. There it is. I can. Yes. Well, as I was trying to say, fuck, I deactivated the sound. There it is. Mute. Now for real. Sorry for everything. Now, as always, thanks for all. Well, yeah, I hope you can properly recognize some faces. I hope you can start training on face recognition. Tomorrow we have exam. We have a test, and we will see how much you can recognize a face or not. So yeah. Now, as always, also, please, thanks for being here. Thanks for everything. But remember to take care. Remember to properly rest. Remember to stay hopeful, and when the next opportunity arises, we're going to do something. We're going to entertain ourselves, and we are going to engage probably in anything. But now it is time to say goodbye. Thanks for all, and yes, protect your family. When the next opportunity arises, whenever it is, we will be here. No more needs for worry. Thanks for all, and yes, let us. Did I mute the mic because of a hit? No, okay, the bot isn't working, so we will make up something. There it is. We will use that one. And now for real, sorry. Goodbye, everybody. Take a rest. When it happens, it happens. Now, goodbye. Radio.